I'm Fred Ryan, and tonight I'm in the role as understudy to Tammy Haddad. Tammy organized this event, but she is under the weather. She's been in bed for the last couple days and was unable to get out. And I would just say for the journalists here, you know that is truly history in the making because Tammy Haddad does not miss an event. In fact, I think she has the unbroken record for attending the White House Correspondents' Weekend, every breakfast, lunch, dinner, reception, and hosting one herself. But she's watching on the Tam cam here, so I better be careful what I say. Hi, Tammy. I'm delighted that to be able to co-host this with Connie Milstein, who's been so terrific in letting the Jefferson be used for so many wonderful events, and of course, Susan Axelrod and Tammy. Mark has been a friend of mine for many years. He's been a neighbor, and fairly unique and be able to say he has represented me in the Maryland legislature. And I have to tell you, he did a fantastic job in the legislature. He was so attentive to constituents, and that we loved him. Mark sent me an advance copy of his book, and I did, I think, what several people here did, kind of the Washington read. You know, you turn to the index, see if you're in there. If you're not, you put it aside. This book did not have an index, so then you flip to the acknowledgments to see if you're thanked, and it doesn't have acknowledgments either. So I read the introduction, you know, that quick skim, and then you put it aside. But actually, I was hooked and was impressed by what a great book it was and is. And you'll hear more from Mark about it. But it's a wonderful thing that he's done. To introduce Mark, I want to talk a little bit about Mark's service. I want to turn over to somebody who has certainly distinguished herself in service in so many different causes, and maybe perhaps best known as the founder and chairman of CURE, the Organization for Epilepsy Research, and that's Susan Axelrod.
Thank you. Thanks, Fred. So I know I'm in Washington, D.C., where everybody thinks about politics, and I think the Shriver family brings to mind first and foremost service, the amazing legacy of this family, the Peace Corps, the Shriver Center for Poverty Law back in Chicago, which is run by a very dear friend of mine, John Bowman, who I noticed mentioned in the book. Personally, my family has benefited from several programs that Mark's family is responsible for, including Best Buddies, where she has really enjoyed meeting peers in the community and having friends that stay loyal to her and create really strong bonds with her. And then also Special Olympics, which I'm sure all of you know about. I actually met Mark first on a very long plane ride out to the Idaho Winter Games, where Tim was presiding. But my daughter, this has been an essential and really fulfilling part of her life. She has probably more gold medals hanging on hooks around her room than you can count, and I'm not sure where this competitive streak of hers comes, but she really gets into it. So I think that what struck me about Mark's book is that many people are going to pick it up to read more about this family, this amazing family and their legacy. But it is so much more than that. Mark and I, the last time I saw him, where this whole event actually was spawned, he was just finishing up the book, and we were talking about writing a book and sharing things that are so personal in such a public way, and the courage that it takes. I don't think I have that courage, and so I admire very much what Mark has done. Lately, I also was thinking, and as I look around the room, I see others with gray hair, so I imagine we're kind of in the same place where I sit down at dinner with friends, and much of the conversation seems to gravitate to our aging parents. Things like transitioning them and how to deal with Alzheimer's, how to deal with other challenges of aging. So beyond the things that I think are so obvious about what people are going to pick up from this book, I think it's an amazing, almost a guidebook for many of us as to how to deal with this. I mean, we're all sort of facing the challenges of how to transition, these transitions in life, how to deal with loss, how to deal with grieving. And I think Mark's book is just an amazing guide for that. And I think his willingness to share how that was for him and continues to be for him is going to help so many people get through this, the transitions, the loss, the grieving, but most of all, the love that I picked up so strongly on in your family and for your dad. So I want to thank you for your courage in doing this and for sharing so willingly what that's been like for you. I think it will really help many. It's a true gift. So thank you, Mark.
I want to just tell one quick story about Fred. I was introduced to Fred when I was interested in getting into politics. And we were introduced by one of my mom's great friends, Mike Fellman. And he said, you got to meet this guy, Fred Ryan. He's, operative in Washington. He knows everybody. He's a wonderful guy. And he's the head of the Ronald Reagan Library. I said, well, you're trying to introduce me to the head of the Ronald Reagan Library? He's not going to want to support a Democrat. And he goes, oh, no, Fred's a great guy. Fred's a great guy. And from that day on, Fred has been a great friend. And I've really valued and grateful for that friendship. So I want to say thank you. I want to introduce my wife, Jeannie. When I was in politics, I always forgot to introduce her. And I always made the mistake. So I want to introduce my wife, Jeannie, as well. I want to say thank you to Senator Dodd. Is he still here? Over there in the corner, he's great friends with my mom and dad. Gave a talk at my father's wake. That was incredibly memorable and incredibly touching. I don't think half of what he said was true, but it was great. It was most of it was all true. But Senator Dodd is terrific, and Congressman Hoyer, who my dad also loved so much from Maryland, who's a great leader not only in Maryland but across the country. Thank you very much for coming. And of course, Secretary Sebelius, who's in the back as well. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. And Bob Casey, Senator Casey is in the way back. Thank you, Senator Casey, for coming. My mom loved your father immensely, and I've got a budding friendship with Senator Casey that's grounded in Holy Cross. We went to the same college. I just want to say a couple of words. Susan spoke so beautifully. I really took my breath away. She's done so much for Cure, and I just felt an immediate connection to her. As you can tell, she really feels things on a different level than really almost anybody I know, and I want to thank her for coming up with this idea and for encouraging me in the book writing process. I think she's got a great book in her, undoubtedly as powerful, if not more powerful, than this little book that I wrote. I want to just give you a quick summary of why I wrote the book. A lot of folks came up to me after Dad died and as he was dying and said he was a good man. And I didn't quite know what that meant. I thought it was just something nice that people said to a son as he was losing his father. But I realized when I started thinking about it that he was hailed as a great man in newspapers and so forth. But what made him good was the fact that he was married to the woman of his dreams for 56 years. He raised 5 kids, all of whom love him. He had a daily, intense relationship with God. He went to Mass every day. He had countless friends, and I don't mean, honestly, Senator Casey's or congressmen's or governors or cabinet secretaries. He had those friends, but he also had the guy at the U.S. Air counter at the National Airport, the 2 women who waited in line, who served him lunch at Reeves Restaurant for 35 years, who literally waited in line and said to me, your dad was a good man, and turned around and walked out of the church at the wake service. So he clearly had the ability to balance his faith, his family, his friends, his commitment to the community, his commitment to the world. And then for me, struggling, as Susan alluded to, trying to balance all that, how to raise 3 kids, how to deal with aging parents, how to have friends and make a commitment to God, and still try to do something with my life. I decided I needed to dig in and try to figure out what Dad's secrets were. And that's what this book really is. Just a series of stories about a guy who lived and somehow balanced all these competing interests, and I think did it very well, who did a good job doing that. And the principles that really, I think, structured his life was his faith, his sense of hope, and his sense of love. And that faith, which was nurtured in him as a child, sustained him through the Depression when his family lost all the money they had, put him through high school and college, and through law school, all on scholarships. The fact that that faith survived with him through World War II, where he signed up a day after graduating from Yale Law School to go fight in the war. And that faith demanded hope. It demanded acts of hope, whether it was in Chicago, working on the Catholic Interracial Council to integrate those schools and hospitals in that city, or whether it was the creation of the Peace Corps, legal services for the poor, Job Corps, VISTA, any of those programs. And ultimately, the acts of love. I know it sounds kind of corny, but he really, I think, believed that. I think that you see that commitment to love in his relationship with my mom of 56 years. You also see it in the fact, some have said that the greatest sign of hope and love and faith for him was the fact that he chased my mom for 7 years before she agreed to marry him. So it was a 7-year courtship before he had a 56-year marriage. But it was that combination of faith, hope, and love, and really as exhibited in his role as a father and a grandfather. I'll just tell one story from the book quickly. My brother Bobby got busted for pot in 1970, and he said it at the funeral, so I'm not letting any state secrets out of the Shriver family in front of a bunch of media people. And, you know, he said how at that point Uncle Bobby had died just a few months earlier, and that Dad was thinking of running for governor of Maryland. Congressman Hoyer worked on that aborted effort. And he was told, Dad flew in, landed, and it was on the front page of the New York Times, and Dad said, come to my room. And he said he remembered walking down that hallway. It was a long walk. And Dad said, sit down. And he sat down. He said, look, you're a good kid. I love you. This is going to be fine. I'm going to take care of you. That was it. No yelling, no screaming, nothing like that. That was the end of the conversation. And Bobby knew that he was loved and supported. And I think when you look at a guy that gave unconditional love like that, when I went into the Peace Corps, a big public announcement was made at the 25th anniversary, and then I dropped out a few months later. And when I had my walk down that hallway to tell him that here was a guy that turned to me and never said, you've ruined my the family name and reputation, particularly with the Peace Corps. How could you do it? He just said, that's fine. How do you want to make a difference? What do you want to do? And we had that conversation. Never once through body language or anything else ever expressed disappointment. He was a guy that loved unconditionally. And I hope some of the little secrets like that about how to be a good father, how to balance fatherhood, faith, and friendship is what the book is really about. I'm going to tell one last story. Greg Jordan, who's in the house here, helped me. He's a great writer out of Baltimore to put this book together. And at the end, towards the end of the book, we were finishing it up. Greg called me up and said, I got engaged. I said, congratulations. And his wife, Allie, is here. And I said, what happened? You know, you guys were dated for a little bit. What happened? What put you over the top? And he said, it was your father. Your father's like become a friend of mine. And I felt that he was telling me to make a commitment to love and a commitment to a long-term commitment to a lifetime commitment to the girl of my dreams. So I hope this little book helps people deal with being a father better or a mother, helps them deal with balancing all those acts. I hope it makes my father a few new friends, and I hope you get a new friend by reading this book. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.